Hi all. This is the Coming Attractions newsletter for 2026 entitled As the Tide Begins to Turn, the Quickening Phase 4 is upping our game to ride the cosmic wave. It starts with a quote by Ram Dass. Quote, embrace the 10,000 beautiful things and embrace the 10,000 ugly things and all of the universe will flow through you. Unquote. Happy winter solstice. When the themes of this channeled newsletter were downloaded through me, they arrived with such force, about 10 pages in 10 minutes via automatic writing, that I literally passed out immediately afterwards with a full nervous system shutdown for 3 hours. Haha. But not to worry, with the quickening, aka the continuous unrelenting acceleration of planetary, galactic, and cosmic energies heralding in the next great age in the evolution of consciousness, running the energetic show, these types of passing out events have become so common over the years, sometimes at the most inopportune times, as my partner will attest, that I'm no longer even alarmed. In fact, I've just added these occurrences to the long list of occupational hazards I've experienced as part of a quote-unquote day at the office of being a fully open trans channel in the heart of New York City for over 53 years. Ta-da! So here we go. Enjoy. The good news for 2026 and beyond is that we're already starting to see some glimmers of brightness as the positive energies of the Aquarian age are beginning to take hold in preparation to shift the pendulum from the predominant darkness of the last few years towards the light once again in this plane of duality. This will be quite the extreme swing, so being prepared will spare us some psychic whiplash. Last year on the winter solstice I wrote, quote, what we're seeing now is not the rebirth to come of the new, but rather the death rattle, the last violent gasp of the old autocratic playbook, rising up one last time before it disintegrates for good. This outcome is almost assured as all the outer planets change signs and start major new cycles supporting this rebirth over the next 2 years. Unquote. And then there's a link for my winter solstice newsletter from last year, Kali Yuga 2.0, staying the course through an epic Plutonian death rattle for the ages. But now, the tipping point has come sooner than in times past, like in the fall of Rome, the Dark Ages, and World War II, to name a few, because of the acceleration of linear time courtesy of the quickening, and then mirrored outward for our viewing pleasure and or pain by the 24/7 news cycle. Haven't you noticed that external and internal events, as well as good news and bad news, appear to be cycling much faster than ever before? Reflections of the good news are evident globally, even in the mass consciousness, the lowest common denominator of awakening. For example, we're approaching a tipping point of more than 51% of the populace swinging towards, 1, viewing the genocide in Gaza as the deciding factor and no longer supporting Zionism indiscriminately, but rather we're witnessing a growing consensus that it is long past time for a Palestinian state. Tipping point of more than 51% of the populace swinging towards democratic socialism, globally and even in the U.S. now, as the signs of wanting universal health care and child care, and who wouldn't, as well as increasingly vociferous desires to get rid of autocracy and fascism are confirmed by the No Kings marches and midterm elections, are all strongly pointing this way. 3, viewing climate change as an existential threat so that switching to clean energy is becoming more of a prioritized global objective. And lastly, a worldwide agreement, now even in the U.S., that Trump should be impeached for treason along with all his minions as a longtime agent of Russia, not to mention as a con man, grifter-in-chief, rapist, racist, pedophile, murderer, etc. If you're with me in supporting all of the above tipping points, let's consciously commit wholeheartedly to holding this vision together and feel the exponential power of that. As we behold the tide turning inexorably this year, even if it's still slower than we'd prefer, it serves to be ever mindful, if we want to expand our consciousness exponentially in the here and now, that the key concept to be in the flow within the ever ephemeral earth game is change, change, change. Likewise, maintaining the soul witness perspective means remembering even at the roughest of times, that we're all committed before entering into this lifetime to be here at this time in history in a precious human incarnation, knowing in the probabilities that the most extreme polarities and contradictions would be in our face more than ever before, especially as we observe accelerating cycles of destruction and creation, wonder and horror, both man-made and or nature-made. And here's another quote by Ram Dass, quote, "I've begun to expand my awareness to be able to look at the universe as it is and see what is called the horrible beauty of it." I mean, there's horror and beauty in all of it, because there's also decay and death in all of it. I mean, we're all decaying. I look at my hand and it's decaying. It's beautiful and horrible at the same time, and I just live with that. And also with it, I see and live with the beauty of it. So we're talking about appreciating what is, not loving yourself as opposed to not liking yourself, but allowing yourself. As you allow, it changes. I think that gets behind the polarities. I think that's what's important, unquote. Now on to the quickening phase 4. There's a quote by one of my favorite writers and philosophers who wrote The Black Swan, Nicolas Taleb, and he says, quote unquote, many years ago, "The world has changed too fast for our genetic makeup," unquote. As many of you know, I've been writing about what I call the quickening for a few decades now. The massive effect of these inescapable higher frequency energies on our physical bodies can be extremely disconcerting and uncomfortable at times, especially for us sensitive ones. This energetic bombardment can also feel quite terrifying if we don't understand what is happening and why. In the last few years, if you've been feeling more easily exhausted, destabilized, ungrounded, and downright dizzy, then you're right on schedule and experiencing some of the special effects of the quickening now moving into phase 4. This galactic tidal wave is here to whack us open to the higher frequencies, ready or not, and turn us inside out and upside down. Also that we're quote-unquote encouraged to focus on how to deal with this shift on the inner levels in the most empowering way. This then informs our view and affects the tone of the mass reality in a most positive tsunami force ripple effect. Added to this new level of high-frequency bombardment of Phase 4 has been heralded in this past year, by announcing its intergalactic presence with the Comet 31/Atlas, only the third known interstellar object to enter our solar system, discovered in July 2025. Also increasingly intense and frequent solar flares, as well as the Schumann resonances affecting us in ways that are off the charts in terms of what a human nervous system can handle. While being aware of the above as a contributing factor to our cascade of unexplainable symptoms, it's certainly not suggested to follow any alarmist social media sites offering daily and dire cosmic weather reports. This is because most of their hidden purposes are to hook you into being on full alert by bombarding you with real-time reports of comets, solar flares, Schumann resonances, and all of that, all focusing on the most horrible possible reactions to them, all to scare you into powerless immobility, unless, of course, you reach out to them for guidance. This amount of too much information is addictive in a very root chakra negative downward spiral that overcharges our adrenal response of fight or flight and feeds our death urge even more than the overall 24/7 mainstream media over-focus on sick excitement. So please be discerning about following any of these grifters on a daily basis whose con is to hook you into emotional hysteria. Not helpful. And there's a link to my article on spiritual teachers, buyer beware. It's particularly important to keep in mind that our genetic makeup may take generations to catch up with how the quickening's energies are affecting us psychically and neurologically. Nonetheless, the good news is that from my perspective, our genetic predisposition is just the tip, about 10% of the karmic iceberg, and thus has only a small proportion of impact on our bodies at the genetic level. This is especially so if we believe that our minds have the power to turn various genetic markers on and off, in many, if not all, cases. For more on this, there's a link to one of my favorite books about this by Dr. Joe Dispenza called You Are the Placebo. The cause of what I call the quickening's cosmic flu symptoms is that the continuous transfusion of higher frequency galactic energies is much more than the quote-unquote normal body's nervous system and psychic circuitry can handle without difficulty. Our job is to learn how to adapt our physical vessels to handle these higher frequency vibrations as a quote-unquote new normal way of being, or during this adjustment period experience the consequences of feeling powerless and allowing fearful probabilities health-wise to accumulate. But adapting is easier said than done, as during this almost continuous rewiring and downloading process, whenever our nervous systems and psychic circuitry are overloaded, our circuit breakers shut down the system so that we don't blow a fuse, which can make us feel very sleepy. When I do channel readings in person, I need to remind clients to breathe deeply and focus on grounding through their root chakra to the earth, as otherwise I've had more and more of them pass out or go unconscious from the high frequencies in the room. In addition, for over a decade now, I've been experiencing the need to take daily naps or, at times, as mentioned, have even uncontrollably passed out, during which I feel like I'm being operated on via psychic surgery, and knocking me out is the energetic anesthesia. Consequently, I've had to adjust my work schedule around the need for this daily downtime. This reminds me of all the times I felt very sleepy when I was learning how to run more psychic energy than my nervous system was used to in the 70s, before I was rewired for the first time. I've been very aware that the quickening phase 4 has moved to a whole other level of intensity in the past year. And believe me, the new symptoms associated with this upsurge are coming from psychic frequencies as their root cause. And yes, I've had regular complete physical checkups just to be on the safe side, which reveal nothing out of the ordinary, which is of course good news. I've already had my psychic circuitry, which is the psychic body equivalent of the nervous system, rewired 3 times to date, in 1976, 96, and most recently in 2016. All to allow me, according to my channels, to handle increasingly higher frequency psychic and galactic energies. And each time these rewirings have been more and more intense and take longer to implement. The last in 2016 took over 6 months, and as soon as mine was done, my partner got rewired for the first time, just to even handle being around me. During these rewirings, it feels like the galactic forces are playing whack-a-mole with all physical operating systems in a quantum recalibration. In the last few months, it feels as if I'm being rewired again, 10 years ahead of the old schedule, all due to the massive input of this energetic tsunami relentlessly downloading in the vertical channel. And I would have to say that this rewiring process, even if it is the first one for some of you, is beginning to happen on a much broader scale. In the meantime, we may feel as if we have what I call the cosmic flu, also known as the psychic flu. This is a confluence of symptoms that many finely tuned souls have been experiencing cyclically for decades, me included. The main symptoms can be combinations of fatigue, body aches, joint pain, structural instability, nervousness, free-floating anxiety, aka metaphysical angst, restless sleep, overactive dream states, brain fog, and feelings that the ego identity is disintegrating. And now the energies flooding us are not just vertical anymore, but horizontal as well. This means that we're being hit simultaneously by the denser cumulative energies of the mass consciousness and the karma of the world. The 1-2 punch of this onslaught can leave us feeling even more unsteady, with episodes of vertical and short-term memory loss, as we're also getting knocked out of linear space and time more and more. If you're experiencing these symptoms, I know that it can feel debilitating and uncomfortable, bordering on painful and at times alarming, especially if you don't know what's happening to you or why you feel under continuous psychic attack with a cyclical increase in mental and emotional disturbances and instability. Consequently, unless we consciously choose to work with these energetic challenges in a positive and empowering way, the inner stability and chaos we feel will continue to be projected out into the view of reality as more unstable and chaotic than it has to be, as we are the projectors and 3D is the movie mirroring as we learn how to be co-creators. The last time I felt this dizzy, as if the world were spinning around me, was when I was in Egypt in 1995 doing psychic initiation practices. The entire 3 weeks there, I felt as if my inner gyroscope was being upended, like the Earth's poles were reversing their axis only as a microcosm in my central channel, and I had to hold on literally to walls, indoors and outdoors, so I wouldn't topple over. My partner Jim, who was with me on this trip, felt as if he was having psychic surgery done on his third eye 24/7, and while cruising towards Luxor, he felt so sick he told me he was leaving his body and to quote-unquote bury him at Karnak. We both survived this psychic energy invasion, but were never quite the same again. The good news is that we were able to sustain operational standards at a much higher psychic frequency after this. For full details of this episode, please read, quote-unquote, When Time Falls Away, in my memoir, Cosmic Sugar. The energies these days feel very similar to the psychic bombardment we experienced in Egypt, which is geographically one of the main space-time portals for cosmic energy to enter most directly into 3D. But now we're all being affected by these accelerating energies wherever we are, geographically, vertically, and horizontally. Yowza. When I did some research, I found that there has been an exponential increase over the last few decades globally in several catch-all medical conditions that synchronicity, I'll have to check that, have similar symptoms to the cosmic flu, but which the medical profession has labeled differently and for which there is no agreed-upon causation, treatment, or cure for those with these diagnoses. For example, in the last year, the CDC estimates there have been more than 24 million new diagnoses of chronic fatigue syndrome worldwide, with who knows how many more millions not diagnosed and stigmatized, with more women than men receiving this diagnosis at a rate of 4-to-1. And then there's a link to read more about chronic fatigue syndrome. In addition, the rates of autism spectrum disorder on the planet have also been growing exponentially over the last few decades. In 2018, the CDC determined that approximately 1 in 59 children has autism spectrum disorder at the rate of 4 males to every female diagnosed. So there are currently 7.7 million souls incarnate on the planet, over 8 billion now. So you can do the math as to how many now have undiagnosed autism spectrum disorder. I see those with autism spectrum disorder as being so psychically and emotionally sensitive that dealing with the energies of the mass reality is too much for them. So they create their own personal reality or world to cocoon themselves in with their own rules, habits, and behaviors for coping with the quickening, which is the present allotted karma for the human race as a whole, which is our new normal, whether we're consciously aware we volunteered for it or not as yet. I've also been hearing from more and more clients, especially the psychically sensitive ones, like canaries in a psychic diamond mine, that are afraid they're getting physically sick, with overheating, exhaustion, shortness of breath, hypervigilance, and passing out, in addition to many of the other symptoms of the cosmic flu already mentioned. My hypothesis is that it's time to consider a paradigm shift in our view of mental, emotional, and physical symptoms, as in many cases, manifestations of the cosmic flu, or at the very least, exacerbated by it, especially those with disorders and syndromes like autism spectrum disorder and chronic fatigue syndrome, with their exponentially rapid spread worldwide over the last few decades. This also includes exponential increases in depression, mood disorders, and IBS, to name a few more, that I'll be addressing further in upcoming newsletters, with chronic Lyme and long COVID added to this list. For more, there's a link to what I write about all these special sensitive souls, called Jupiter Exalted, Our Saviors Walk Among Us. I've always considered myself, quote-unquote, on the spectrum, as well as, in the last few years, manifesting many of the symptoms, although in less drastic form, that are known into the catch-all phrase of chronic fatigue syndrome. And while there are many assumptions as to causes, such as vaccines, bacteria, or environmental factors, nothing has been proven definitively. As for any genetic component, I've always considered genetic predisposition for disease as the tip of the karmic iceberg, as well as PTSD from childhood trauma. When I do health readings, I tend to answer most questions as to what causes specific diseases, whether mental, emotional, psychic, karmic, or physical, to be a multiple choice answer of all of the above. Western medicine, science, and physics are all still far behind in working with these symptoms, and this includes addictive self-medicating with recreational drugs or alcohol to handle the reality of our new normal. And for more on this, there's links to articles in my writing section of my website, The Nature of Addiction, It's Only Human, and Why Is This Happening to Me? Body Karma Explained. I hope my description of the quickening's effects will help you acclimate to your own cosmic flu symptoms and rewiring upgrades without freaking out as much. Standing Qigong continues to be a saving grace for me, as does Tuina massage, other types of deep body work, and regular acupuncture on psychic, emotional, body levels. All necessary supports to help keep me internally calm and stable at my core, regardless of the levels of vertical and horizontal bombardment I'm under, which seems to be escalating all the time, relentlessly. The good news is that operating at these higher psychic frequencies of the quickening allows us to manifest our desires by cutting through the density of the physical plane much faster than ever before, at times almost instantaneously. Thus we have what I call boomerang or instantaneous echo karma. Now that's fast. Consequently, we need to be extra careful and especially mindful of what we desire to manifest, so we don't incur karma by the misuse of our psychic powers for personal gain at the expense of others. All levels of power can be addictive and subject to right use or misuse, but there is a special warning label on psychic and spiritual power, as these are the most addictive levels of all, and the ones capable of incurring the most karma. For more, please read my article called, If This Were Your Last Incarnation, What Would You Do? Unquote. That's why it seems like the perfect time to share more of the positive effects of the quickening, for then we can choose to focus on the internal changes occurring for many of us in a more optimistic light, as Goddess knows we could all use some constructive encouragement these days. The energies of the quickening are awakening us to the higher reality that all planes of consciousness are actually right here and right now. They're just operating at different frequencies. And as we learn how to attune to these higher frequencies, which is one of the purposes of the quickening, and loosen our attachment for identity to only being in the relative reality and density of the earth plane, rather than a more absolute reality where all veils of illusion and separation fall away, becomes our new operating mode of being. As we are all part of the earth game, or what my channels have always called, quote-unquote, the experiment now in progress, it behooves us to view all of our quickening symptoms as not weird or wrong, but rather something that our souls volunteered for prior to entry in this incarnation to expand our range as co-creators, using our physical vessels as a laboratory. Based on my overall read of the force of the current energies affecting us, I've concluded we're entering the next phase of this ongoing bombardment with perhaps the maximum speed of vibrational power that human beings have ever had to contend with to date. The quickening is affecting everyone, but for those of us who are psychically sensitive, it can be especially uncomfortable, even though the ultimate outcome is positive, the ability to handle more juice with an expanded consciousness of being. Perhaps it's time to start working with all of the various symptoms in the ever-growing list of this cosmic flu pandemic from a spiritual perspective, as whenever life pushes at us like this, it literally forces us to gather our forces, get stronger, and grow more internally stable as a form of what I call spiritual resistance training. And now more than ever before, we're moving into a period of just such intensive training. Before we go further, please remember what Ram Dass says, quote, "We are in the perfect circumstances for our souls to learn whatever they designed this whole game to learn. As the process of karmic fruition speeds up, our lives get freer and freer from attachment, and we create less and less karma," unquote. To support all levels of our operating systems, I found a solution that helps maintain my sanity and equanimity on a daily basis. In addition to Taoist practices to ground and stabilize the physical vessel and dissolve anxiety, I've developed new and improved psychic empowerment practices to handle these energies in ways that keep me peaceful and at least semi-functional. When I teach these practices to others, they unanimously declare that these practices are life-changing, and many weep and say they wish they had learned these as children, whom I've also started working with more and more. On a personal note, now that I'm in my 8th decade, my body karma is most challenged these days at the level of physical mobility, necessitating a daily ingestion of CBD oil as well as other supplements to help lubricate all my creaky joints. In addition, I've also started using a walking stick, as the world does tend to spin around me, and I also try to avoid too many stairs when possible, as there's little depth perception left. And yet, at the same time, I'm very aware that my psychic energies have never been this powerful. Here are the key daily practices. 1, knowing that you're not physically sick in the traditional Western medical sense of having a physical cause, treatment, and cure for your psychic symptoms, especially when they manifest through the physical body. Many of my clients were so concerned about their symptoms that they also had complete physicals just to be on the safe side, and all tests were normal. 2, Taoist standing Qigong practice to ground the energy, and Taoist sitting practice to stay centered and internally stable. And 3, psychic empowerment practices to handle the feelings of being energetically under assault, vertically and horizontally. For full details, there's a link to my psychic empowerment practices, which include 2 Taoist practices MP3s. In summation, I think it's helpful to keep in mind that we're only on the threshold of the next great age in the sign of Aquarius, which will last for over 2,000 years, and that the higher frequency galactic energies bombarding us, while necessary to kickstart this next stage in the evolution of human consciousness, are also playing havoc with all levels of our bodies, from the psychic to the physical. We are all evolutionary guinea pigs in the vanguard of this new age. Again, some of the side effects of this intense download of energies include overtaxed nervous systems, strained psychic circuitry, disturbed sleep, overactive dream states, unexplainable fatigue and exhaustion, feelings of structural instability and joint pain, irrational anxiety, and brain fog. So if you've been feeling overloaded by higher frequency downloads and or drained or assaulted by lower vibrational energies, you're exactly on schedule. But please consider that implementing daily mind-body spiritual practices will radically improve your ability to function on planet Earth in the years to come. As Chogyam Trungpa says, quote, "Don't fight with reality. Don't defend against it. Rather read it like you would a newspaper. Read everything that happens to you and to others as pertinent news about the reality of being human, of being you." I'm sure everyone listening to this has been feeling the quickening's energies enough to have been wondering, what the fuck is going on and when is it going to let up? Well, like the Eagles song Hotel California says, we can check out, but we can never leave. I.e., try to distract ourselves or ignore the quickening, as there is truly no escape and nowhere else to go. In fact, these energies show no sign of ever slowing down again. And then there's a link to all my other, or some of my other newsletters on the quickening in phase 1, 2, and 3. And closing off this section, a quote by Albert Einstein, quote, "We are slowed down sound and light waves, a walking bundle of frequencies tuned into the cosmos. We are souls dressed up in sacred biochemical garments, and our bodies are the instruments through which our souls play their music." Last but not least, here are major astrological themes for 2026. Firstly, karmic teacher Saturn moved into unrelenting Aries on May 24th, with one last retrograde into Neptune ruling Pisces from July 13th to November 27th, 2025 for a review. Then spiritualizing Neptune synchronistically began its uninterrupted 12-year sojourn through warrior Aries. On January 26, 2026, after also having a Piscean review through October 23rd, 2025. These two major ingresses culminate on February 20th, 2026, when Saturn and Neptune will meet at 0 degrees Aries, indicating a time of the most major new beginnings. In fact, this planetary powerhouse event signifies that 2026 may indicate the biggest changes on planet Earth in our lifetimes, and I'm sure you can feel these energies building up speed and velocity. Accordingly, as 2025 draws to a close, it behooves us to consciously prepare for this most significant transit of 2026 by getting as grounded, centered, and stable at our core, in our bodies, on the physical, energetic, mental, and emotional levels as possible, as we'll need to be our own calm and still eye amidst the coming storm, personally and en masse. This Saturn-Neptune conjunction at 0 Aries on February 20th offers us the archetype of dreaming a new world into being while simultaneously witnessing the dissolution of the old like a sandcastle washed away by the tide. As Saturn rules form and Neptune is formless, we'll be witnessing more and more outer structures on a mass scale building up and then dissolving, so that all life appears as a symbolic lucid dream in which its ephemerality leaves us unequivocally without any illusions of external control, and thus the wisdom of non-attachment. is most pertinent. On a personal level, as people, places, things, and circumstances may peak and then fall away, including outmoded facets of identity, making every moment, every place, and every loved one that much more poignant and precious. In a final note, since Saturn rules form and Neptune rules what is formless, and since I haven't found any time in history where these two diametrically opposed energies came together before, ever at the 0 point of creation of a whole new cycle, I can only surmise that for those of us that are ready, the illusionary boundaries between form and formless will become semi-permeable and even dissolve as our new way of witnessing 3D may be, as form and formless continuously arising and dissolve into each other. But then I have Saturn and Neptune and Libra conjunct in my birth chart, along with Mercury and powers of fortune, aka greatest joy, on the 8th, 9th house cusp of metaphysics and philosophy of life. So this is more or less where I already reside. But how this major transit on February 20th will manifest for each of us personally and globally will be our February surprise. And one of my favorite quotes on this subject from Samuel Beckett, quote, "The forms are many in which the unchanging seeks relief from its formlessness." Next in line with the transits of the year, we have the trickster of awakening Uranus trine transformational Pluto between Gemini and Aquarius exact 3 times, July 2026, November 2026, and July 2027, which will accelerate innovation, awakening, and radical reconfiguration of society, technology, and consciousness itself. But before this major development fully kicks in, Uranus will actually retrograde back into Taurus on November 7th, 2025, before re-entering Gemini fully. April 2026 will remain until May 2033. This gives us a just over 6-month review that we're now in of all the lessons learned and wisdom gained, with Uranus wrapping up his journey in comfort-loving Taurus for the last 8 years. When Uranus first moved into earthy Taurus, March 2019, I wrote that we need to prepare ourselves to be able to witness with equanimity more and more of that which has been known and safe falling away. And now through April 2026, this theme will amplify the trickster of awakening's energies more than ever before. So we can expect even more, oh yes, unpredictable events, whether man-made and nature-made, occurring during this last phase of this particular cycle of karmic lessons coming our way on all levels. To see how well you've learned the Uranian curriculum of the last 7 years is a link to all your stagnant comfort zones are going, gone. Another important transit of the year, abundance ruling Jupiter, is in nurturing Cancer until June 2026, with a review period where it's retrograde between November 2025 and March 2026. Ever reminding us to always make sure that any paths we choose are ones with heart. Otherwise, why bother? In closing, perhaps the best attitude to cultivate about the quickening is a reverence for being receptacles of this gift from the divine, of a quantum recalibration of our human operating systems from 3D to 5D, so that our new normal will have all dimensions available viscerally and simultaneously in the eternal now. By this definition, calling this process we're all in the quote-unquote ascension, which is a old New Agey term, an outmoded New Agey term, is a misnomer prone to an almost 180-degree misunderstanding. This term has been hugely misinterpreted as we're not ascending or going anywhere, but rather we're allowing the quickening's downloads to move us to a new operational system in 5D and beyond, while simultaneously fully embodied in a human incarnation, thus allowing us to viscerally know the timeless wisdom of no escape as we're bringing our light bodies in for a landing in the physical plane. While at times the download process feels almost violent to our habitual sensibilities, I do have faith that nothing less than what is occurring meets the necessity of the current circumstances to optimize the timeline and the probabilities to shift gears en masse. This means as we evolve, we'll be able to give the priority focus of our time and energy to inner cultivation of peace of mind, to affect the outer tone and calm it down from its current state of churning chaos. This means, as our primary focus is on maintaining peace in our inner kingdom, so that it won't be so much about outer productivity anymore as the need for ego-fueled external validation for self-worth falls away as we evolve. As for many of us, greed on the ego or sense pleasure levels for more will also fall away as we evolve and know that external horizontal feeding is an ultimately futile attempt to feed the hungry ghost / infinite void we all have as microcosms of the macrocosm at the core of our central channels, when only vertical feeding from the infinite source will do. But rather to recognize in the holographic ripple effect that our catalytic alchemical transformation affects the quantum field as a whole, as we are one being with billions of faces. And just like the group consciousness of worker ants, some of us may volunteer to lay the foundation in the vanguard of building a new bridge towards a brighter future. My faith in this is absolute, so please feel free to borrow some of mine while your own percolates. Wishing us all joy in being for whatever 2026 brings us in the flow of change, change, change.